Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out. Lisa, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
I am so good. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just as we were talking beforehand, normally I tell people to go back and watch the original episode of that person for their like backstory and what they're doing. But as we discussed before, what you were doing is not at all the same as what you are doing now. So, do you want to do a new quick intro for the people, and then we'll do the question from the last guest, and then we'll hop into wherever it takes us.
Sure thing. So in my previous video, I was a clinician at a psychiatric hospital on the psychotic unit, but nowadays I am just working at two private practices. One is strictly telehealth, one is both virtual and in person. And yeah, just providing individual therapy to children through adults with a variety of diagnoses.
Very nice. But with the holidays, it's going to be busy. I feel like people either get like happy to be with their people or like lonely if they don't have them.
Quite
So,
literally one or the other. And then
yeah.
also being by a naval base, you have all of the people whose husbands are deployed.
Hmm.
And so, yeah. So it can be rough, or it can also be like a nice little break for me because everyone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna cancel. I'm going home." So
Fair enough. All right, so the question from the last guest is if you could be a professional like top at your sport or at a sport other than yours, what would it be? So I know that
any,
any sport,
go ahead. Any sport, probably basketball, actually.
well, other than basketball, because that's yours.
Other, um, any sport other than basketball. This is hard because women's sports is not as like I watch more men's sports than women's sports, if I'm being honest. So, um, I probably like if I was a man, which I'm not, but if I was, I would love to be a football player. I think
Hmm.
that's so cool. Minus CTE, I think that's so cool.
Minus the CTE. Yeah, don't go follow Antonio Brown on Twitter. That's
Yeah,
it's not
no,
it's not a good it's not
I
a
won't
good
be
look.
doing that.
Yeah, football is a super cool sport. Sometimes when I see the collisions, I'm like, ooh, it makes me want to like turn it off. Like every time there's a pile, I'm just waiting for somebody's knee to be like landed on or whatever. And then for whatever reason, and it very rarely happens. Like every time I think there's going to be a big injury, there's not. And I'm like,
Yeah,
every time.
and my dad coaches, so I've been football's been in my life since 1995. I just aged myself, but yeah, so I love football.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I don't maybe you agree or have a different experience, but I feel like when I was like middle school, high school, or like late elementary school, middle school, high school, football was super big, at least for me. I was playing Madden all the time, and we'd go
Hmm.
play like after school, we'd all play tackle football in the backyard, like all the friends from school or whatever. And then like getting into high school and then college, it just like besides intramurals, like flag football, just like I stopped completely paying attention to it.
That's because we went to a school with no football team, though.
Well, that's true, but even the NFL, like I kind of
Really?
stopped. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I actually regret not going to a school. I don't. I do and I don't because I love Mary Wash, but I also wish we had a football team because it is such a bigger part of my life. But I see what you're saying. What I realized the other day, actually, because I'm not that into college football, and I was wondering why. Where I'm from in New York, like New York is very hello, like it's New York. So there's how many three NFL teams, two basketball teams, two baseball teams. So we were able to like stick to the professional sports, whereas like I feel down here, you have all the big, Virginia is all colleges like
Hmm.
JMU, UVA, Tech, and so people identify more with like colleges versus DC sport teams. So I never really got into college stuff. That's my only thing. But other than that, I love professional sports. So
Yeah, I feel like it's a regional thing. Like I went to my in-laws and they're from kind of central Pennsylvania area, and they're into the Steelers and Penn State. But
makes
so like
sense.
so that area they've got pro and college, and then if you go down to like the South, it's all SEC, it's all college, and then like New York is all pro, and then I feel like it depends on where you are for who's doing what, and then there's some like random smatterings of different like USC and UCLA and LA, but then also you've got like the Chargers and stuff that's out there. So
Hmm.
I don't really know. I've never actually been out there, so I don't really know what it's like, but I feel like it depends on the area. And then also I realized like watching college sports, some guy like took off his helmet, and I was like, "You're 12." Like you're 12.
That's true too. It literally always reminds me of my age when I see somebody in college, or like a lot of my clients nowadays, they're like 20 to 23 in college or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, but you're also a child.
Yeah.
So, and
We
it's
did
like they're not, but they are.
we didn't think we were children though. We were like, we're grown.
I was a big dog,
It's like,
but now I have grays, so now I'm a
oh,
real adult.
no, no, don't use you got dye and stuff. It's all good. You don't have to tell anyone that. So, okay,
Yeah.
so what have you been up to from the standpoint of like you've got your two kind of practices that you've got going on. How did that transition occur from like getting punched in the face at a hospital by a psychiatric person to like now you're just on the phone with somebody? Like how did that transition occur? Like what did you get punched in the face one too many times and you're like I'm out, or was there like what did you want? Is this what you wanted to be doing originally?
This was like when you would have asked me what my goal was in grad school, I would have said to end up actually owning my own private practice. But now that I'm really in the field and have been in the field for, what is it, 6 years now? I can't remember. It's all a blur. Um, it's, I don't mind not owning, actually. I don't mind working underneath someone because I'm still kind of my own boss. I make my own schedule. If I don't want to come in one day, I don't have to check in with anybody. I just move my own clients. So it's like the independent part of it is great. And also, I don't like being micromanaged. So I don't mind learning and looking up to people and supervision and things like that. But I guess working for maybe a hospital, it's more of a team thing, whereas this is more individualized and just really what my end goal was to be like a people like you and I are my types of clients where maybe we have some, underlying depression, anxiety, ADHD, etc. But ultimately we're stable, we have jobs, we have homes, we have spouses or pets or whatever the case may be. So this is more comfortable.
Yeah. Talk, I want to know a little bit because so the hospital piece is interesting because I had her name is Tammy, and she was the chief operating officer for some giant hospital system down in Southern Cal for a while. And she was talking about like all the different teams and stuff at the hospitals and how complex it all is and like this hospital needs X number of units of whatever and they gotta rush people over there and then this person needs to get transferred or promoted or like they've got to because it's a business to run at the end of the day and how complex it is. But I feel like a small practice for like medicine stuff is more I don't know. I was like, I I would say better because you get a more personalized like every person is different, so every person needs different like things, regardless of if it's medical or like mental health or whatever. But I want to talk about some of the like 'cause a lot of the subject material that we talk about on the show is like people our age are kind of lost.
Mhm.
And you and I know some people that maybe fall into that category, and it feels super difficult. Like if I listen to like my parents or whatever talk about, oh yeah, well we just bought a house and then we got a job and then your mom stayed at home and it's like, yeah, but you bought a house for a box of strawberries back in whatever and now you're a millionaire just because you own the house. Like it doesn't like there's a lot more pressure I feel like and maybe the guidebook on how to navigate it is a lot more confusing. Is that kind of what you're seeing when with the people that are coming to you, or like talk about some of like I don't know. I guess we'll just leave it at that, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that is actually one of the most common topics that I think I spend a lot of time reality checking my clients because everybody goes off that biological clock and everybody goes. And one of the things, let me start with this. One of the things I always try to explain is evolution. So when you think back, so I know my grandparents got married like maybe in their late teens, early 20s, right? My parents got married maybe in their early 20s, mid 20s. My sisters got married in their late 20s. And so what people fail to realize is as time passes us by, things change. And so if you try to say, oh, well, I expect to be married by this age, you're forgetting that piece of it, but you're also forgetting the piece of like your life is so much different than everybody else's that you're trying to like attach yourself to because you have Facebook, right? If you log
Hmm.
on to Facebook, there's going to be 3 new engagements, 2 people are pregnant, and all this. And then you look at yourself and you're like, well, I'm not in a relationship and I don't have a child and I'm already this age. And so a lot of the time, what I do, I use a really silly example, Eric, and I always talk about, this is so silly, but I talk about Kim Kardashian and just stay with me.
Okay,
So what I
I'm with
stay with
you.
me.
I'm with you.
So what I say is we talk about what she's known for in terms of like she was voted man of the year or picked to be man of the year one year. She has a lot of success. She's like a billionaire. She's now studying to be a lawyer. She has a beautiful family, but she's been married like 3 times, can't keep a man, right? So what we talk about is this, does her lack of being able to have a successful marriage negate all the other success that she's had in her life? And then we also talk about she is what society deems to be as like one of the most beautiful women with her body, her face. I mean, she has the finances to achieve that societal beauty, right? And so when people think to themselves, well, maybe I'm just not as pretty or skinny enough, and that's why I'm not married. Okay, then why is Kim Kardashian not married? So a lot of the comparing is just the most unhelpful thing that people naturally start to do. And so yeah, that is one of the most I'm actually not surprised that you brought it up because I spent my day yesterday with a couple of clients talking about that. Um, People are really disappointed in themselves because they set small goals, which is great, but then you can also expand your goals and basically just not edit them, but what's the word I'm looking for? Just
Refine.
change. Yeah, exactly. So
Talk about some
100%.
like advice to get through that because I think like you mentioned, a lot of people like will look at somebody else's life and say like, "Oh, I don't have whatever, whatever thing."
Hmm.
Um, and so when you like start comparing yourself to everybody's life, everybody has something that you don't have. And so it starts to get very daunting very quickly of like, well, that person has that and I don't have it, and that person has that other thing that I don't have, and that person has that, and like all of a sudden you're at like 100 things that it looks like everyone else has, but they don't, but it's really just one person. And you just start to like, I feel like you start to build that on yourself. So how do you like get, because it can feel like an unattainable thing or like insurmountable almost like because you have to start with
Hmm.
yourself at some point. So how do you get like how do you get somebody to say, okay, I'm gonna take the first step, and the first step is that I'm gonna whatever the case may be in their personal situation. Like how do you scale them back into like, no, you gotta work on yourself first, and like the rest of it will kind of fall into like maybe not fall into place, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah, no, I
how do
get
you
what you're
get them to
saying.
like scale back into that because it's say like, oh, some people will say, well, you should just delete Instagram off your phone. It's like, well, maybe, but also like that's hard because your friends are on there and you want to like share reels with people or memes or whatever. And then will you say, well, okay, so I'm not gonna delete Instagram, but I'm gonna look at it less. And then it's like you set the time limit, and then and your phone is like, all right, your time limit's up for the day, and you click ignore. So like, how do you get people to kind of come back into themselves and like make it where they focus on themselves, but not in a way that's like selfish. Because I feel like that's a really hard, like it took me a very, very long time to like sort out how to do that mentally, to like look in the mirror and say like I don't like this part about myself, and then actually confront it and then actually deal with it. And like my wife's been super helpful with that, but at the same time, it's like it's not easy to do. So if like how do you help with that? Or like what's some advice for that?
Yeah, so I have two tools that I like to use primarily, and then through talk therapy is really the ultimate way to, deal with these things that you're talking about. But the first tool we take from positive psychology, and I do it myself. And you have to do it every day. It takes a couple minutes. You don't got to write it down, but you can to see your progress, right? You'll start to see changes around 2 weeks, 6 weeks, and 3 months. So you have to be consistent with it to see these changes. But it's so simple. It's just saying three good things that happened during your day, every day. And that one of those things you have to be the causal factor of. And
Mm.
this helps with mood. This helps with self-esteem. And I'll give you an example of a time this has helped me. So if anybody knows me, which my clients know this, so this is okay. I am not the best at driving. I never have been the best at driving. Maybe it's because of being from New York, because I didn't get this many tickets in New York, or maybe I'm just not the best driver, right? I have a heavy foot, is what it is.
Oh yeah, of
So,
course, of
yeah.
course.
So, unfortunately, allegedly, I was recklessly driving 2 times, which means I had two reckless driving tickets to combat. I beat one, really exciting. And then the other one's pending. But so let's talk about the day that I beat the one, right? I had to appeal it and go to court again. I had to do 54 hours community service and a 12-hour driving course and drive to Jersey to get my car calibrated. And I've spent thousands of dollars on this ticket just for driving a little bit faster than I should have been, basically, right? And so I have court that morning. They tell me basically, hey, it could take all day long. So I cancel a bunch of my clients around that day. I go to court, I beat the ticket. I go to IHOP, I get a milkshake. That's something my mom used to do when we were younger, like to celebrate things, get milkshakes, right? Then I end up taking a couple clients from home, go to the office, do an easy day, 4 people in person, come back. I was taken on a date to Ryan's Rooftop, which is like a really fancy restaurant I've always wanted to go to. And at the end of the day, this person who took me out looks at me and he's like, "This was a really good day." And in my head, I'm like, I got to take. I went to court. You know what I'm saying? I went to work, like, and I ate some. Like, what do you? And I process it. And I'm like, okay, 3 good things. Well, number one, I beat this ticket, which was taking a toll on my mental health, right? Number two, I got to have a milkshake at like 11 a.m., which I don't do that. I'm too old to be having milkshakes in the middle of the day. So to be able to do that was amazing. And then I was able to go to this restaurant that I've always wanted to go to and had quite literally one of the most immaculate meals I've ever had. Got to wear this new dress I got to it. I got to do my make, all the things, right? And so when I thought about it, I was like, oh, today was a great day. But psychology says our brains are so quick to focus on the negative versus the positive. So doing this has helped me as well. That would be the first technique that I would tell anybody who doesn't necessarily, maybe isn't ready to start their therapeutic journey or whatever the case may be, to get involved in, because it's simple, it's quick, you have no excuse to not do it really, and it significantly will impact mood and self-esteem, which are the first 2 things to really work on in order to kind of do everything you were just talking about, right? The second tool that I would say is oh my goodness, I lost my whole train of thought. Hmm. Let's stick with the first one, Eric.
All right, sounds good.
I just lost my whole
I
train of
think that's a
thought.
good one. Maybe you'll remember it. Cut me off if you remember.
Okay.
Because the second kind of piece of things that I wanted to touch on. So there's been a lot of talk in the news, the last, I don't know, year or whatever, about um different pharmaceutical companies and different medicines and different kind of scandals of things that have happened, regardless of if they're kind of in the therapeutic world or not, right? Opioids and different things.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the things that I always had wondered or like considered was the kind of band-aid fix culture that I feel like we're in. Like a lot of things I feel like could be fixed with hard work and consistency and time and like changing a diet or exercise um but instead especially like with kids, it's like kids are inside all day, and then all of a sudden people are like, well, we'll just give them like Adderall. It's like, okay, well, maybe they should go outside more. It's like it seems, you know what I mean? So like I don't know, like what are you seeing within the industry um about that sort of thing? Like if you have thoughts that you're willing to share without, like getting yourself in trouble or whatever, but kind of what are your thoughts on that sort of realm of things with both with development and then like also the people that you're seeing, because some of it I feel like is you got somebody trapped in a place that they don't want to be for 8 hours a day for the first from age 4 till 18 or whatever, and it's
18.
like I feel like that's not good for people. Um, but so do you have, like, how do you feel about those sorts of things?
What you said, describing it as like that band-aid, that quick band-aid. I always say you can't put a band-aid over a bullet wound, right?
Nope.
So yeah, maybe some of the blood will stop, but in the end, at the end of the day, you're dealing with something much deeper in a sense. So I actually am in agreement with you from what I'm like gathering on what your perspective is in a sense. I remember we've talked about how like we don't even want to take Tylenol if we have a headache. So there's like a couple of extremes, right? There's people like who genuinely will try to use maybe more holistic approach or just try to like toughen through things or whatever the case may be. And then there's people who are like med shopping. And so being in this field, I've been able to see both ends of the spectrum, and I've found myself kind of geared towards one side, and that's more so. I'm not crazy about medication, if I'm being honest with you. That's in my own perspective, but there are times where I have been with a client for X amount of time and we've been working on things, and there's certain things that maybe medication would help manage. And this is a conversation. My sister is a doctor, and so she's very much so like, oh, you have anxiety, have a Xanax. Where I see that Xanax can be addicting, short lasting, habit forming, and all of that, right? So it's all really just perspective. So I'm not going to sit here and say my perspective is like the right one in a sense, but I will say in doing what I've done for so long, I have been able to prove to myself at least that talk therapy can really cure a lot of symptoms that people experience, whether it's a motivation, right? That lack of motivation to get up and take a shower and your hygiene's poor because of that, or whether it's poor appetite, whether you're eating too much or you're eating too little, and certain things like that. So, yes, if you have, we've talked about, psychosis before. If you are battling like voices and delusions, I can give you all the talk therapy in the world, but ultimately you might need to have some kind of antipsychotic to
Yeah.
stabilize and find that baseline, right? When it comes to people, maybe mine and your age and younger, I really truly believe that they should try talk therapy first for things like depression, anxiety, ADHD, et cetera. Especially with kids, Adderall, Concerta, Ritalin, Vyvanse, those are all controlled substances that can impact your brain chemistry. And I know there's this running joke on Twitter that once you're 25, like your brain, boop, you're developed, and it's not necessarily like on the day of your birth at 25. That's the truest thing. But yes, of course, once we hit 25, we're starting to gear more towards like this is who you are, and that's because there's a stage from 18 to 25 called emerging adulthood. It's nicknamed like the age of identity, the age of exploration, where you don't know yourself and you're trying to figure out who you are. So you may try things like being more promiscuous or maybe trying drugs or getting tattoos and piercings or stuff that might not be what you were doing when you were younger than that. And adults look at that and they go, this is a problem. Like you need help. And we're going to send you to get medication in a sense. So, yes, I don't think, in my opinion, that you necessarily need medication if you're dealing with certain things, but sometimes, there might be that recommendation where I'm like, hey, we've been working at this for a year, and this is something that, without like revealing too much about what my clients have been through, that's something that medication could probably help in a sense. And
Yeah.
then trying medication trials.
Yeah, it's not to say it has no place for sure. Um, I think it's like from what I have seen, or like the amount of people that I know that are on something is like I'm like everyone, like really, is so like I don't know, like I just like you just notice little things and then you hope like well have you tried like in your own head like I would not go to well if it's a close friend maybe but like I would not go to everyone who's doing that and be like hey have you tried whatever because that's not my job but I can only speak from my own experience of like yeah well if I'm feeling a little bit down what would really be good is if I take the dog for a 30-minute walk and I don't have a headphone in at all and I'm just going or like even if I'm listening to something it's I'm just like out of whatever that environment was that was annoying me. Um, and so I found that to be a good thing for my own self, but especially for like you mentioned the brain chemistry and stuff. It like it feels strange and it's concerning. Like if I have kids one day and like I they come home with like, oh well, the doctor says we should get whatever. And be like, for what? Why? Like, can we maybe like have them go outside more? Or like, it feels strange. It feels strange that like young people are getting their brains messed with by all these things, and then on top of that, you see the news come out like, well, actually, they paid this person off to not say this study was really whatever, and then you listen to the side effects. There was one I heard yesterday. It's like, oh yeah, the side effects of this antidepressant include suicidal thoughts, death, anxiety, and depression. I'm like, this is an depressant. Why is the side effects depression and suicide? Like, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And of course, that doesn't mean everyone will get the side effects, but at the same time, like, to listen to those two statements back to back, it's like, hmm, I don't know
But you
about that.
also, no, and that's a great point. You also have to take in consideration, like, so people maybe when we were in college, right? Everybody drank. That was just, I mean, 9 times out of 10, you were going to drink in college, whether you were drinking, or just drinking, you were drinking. And so alcohol is a depressant. All of it except for tequila is a depressant. And so if you're drinking beer, vodka, pick one, right? And then you're also taking any SSRI, any antidepressant, you're actually doubling the impact of it, and you're creating more depressive symptoms for yourself. So that's the reason why I got into talk therapy, because for me, I wanted to be able to prove that you can actually, like you just said, taking your dog on a walk, you're exploring your coping skills right there, because that works for you, that might not work for so and so, but then maybe meditation works for so and so, or reading or journaling. Or I know I have so many clients that are like, I hate journaling, but then so many that like it saved them.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I'm not here to tell you you have to do certain things, but I'm here to help you figure it out, basically. And we can do that without going straight to medication. And then you have social media, right? And all the kids are like, they think it's almost trendy to take meds. And they'll like hop on TikTok and be like, yeah, I'm prescribed Wellbutrin and I'm on, you know what I'm saying? And so it's almost like it's a cool thing nowadays to be on psychiatric medication. So I get
Yeah.
what you're saying.
There's a comedian that had a bit about it. I think John Mulaney, I think that's who it was. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I need to get more Xanax because his friend gave it to him." And the friend was like, "Oh, just go to the doctor and say that you feel anxious on airplanes." It's like that feels not
By
like
by the way, it's that easy.
yeah.
It's literally that easy nowadays. You can go to any psychiatrist right now and say, "Hey, I have a hard time focusing," and that's it. And boom, you can get your Adderall prescription. Easy, easy.
It
And
feels
people
strange.
abuse Adderall
Yeah.
because it is.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. And it feels kind of at like a societal level, like we've got a bunch of just drugged up people walking around. Like it doesn't feel
Hmm.
I don't know. Obviously, I was not an adult 20 years ago. Obviously, it's not how time works. But like if like I walk around or like I see people on socials, to your point about social media, and I'm just like some of the holes that I see people that have dug themselves into, it like feels so just like I was lucky from the standpoint of like I'm very introspective. And so I started
Hmm.
thinking about this stuff like younger, like when I was in college. And so I had kind of the ability to start somewhere. Um, and sometimes I see stories or people it's like they don't want to get out of the bed because they're worried that they're not in shape. And so like they're upset that they're not in shape, so they don't want to go for a walk. And then food gives them dopamine and then it just spirals and like everything just spirals and spirals and spirals and it's so easy I feel like to just get caught in one of those. Oh, I don't know. Nay, I'm talking about depressing things. It's your fault because it's your job. No, I'm
I
just kidding.
was gonna say,
Um,
welcome to my job.
yeah,
But
no, I'm
actually,
sure.
let me circle back because let me give you the other thing that can
Sure.
help you because you bring up a good point, and that's another thing a lot of clients talk about is and that's a simple example to use, but basically just I know I want to go to the gym, but I can't get myself to get up and go to the gym. And so I had one of my clients the other day actually order this like weighted hula hoop. I said, let's start. I mean, typically studies have shown with this hula hoop that 5 times a week, 30 minutes a day, which is really nothing, right?
Mm-mm.
In the scheme of life. And you can watch TV when you're doing it, can make a huge impact. Your waistline can decrease and all the things. But maybe she wants to start at like 3 times a week, 10 minutes a day. And so it's also building yourself up. Don't expect to just, one day everybody wants to go to the gym and then see like 50 pounds on the floor the next day when they wake up. That's that band-aid on a bullet wound, right? You can't just try to get always short-term results because as quick as you fix it is as quick as it might break in a sense. So something else that I help clients with is like goal setting in general. And so I call it 3, 6, 9, 12, right? 3 months, 6, 9, 1 year. And what we do is we set those 4 goals for the year. And then we say, okay, now that they're set, well, we should work on the short-term ones first. So what steps do you need to take that goal, right? So I knew somebody, he was a chef and he had just gotten like his education and in culinary and all that stuff. And he's like, well, I'm going to sell plates on the weekends. And he just kept talking about it. And I'm like, when are you going to actually do it? Like, what's your plan? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to, well, what's step one? Okay, well, maybe you need to market it. So you need an Instagram for it. Well, I tried to create Instagram and the name I was wanted to use was taken. I said, have you tried this name? So didn't even realize that. Well, I also need a profile picture for the Instagram. Didn't realize that. So now we create the logo. So basically, not to get like too kind of confusing, but you don't even realize what steps you actually need to take until you start to really pan it out and write it down and get organized in your goals and then start to try to achieve those steps towards your goals instead of just automatically trying to hit that goal right away in a sense.
Yeah. Well, they have to be
So,
achievable as well. Like if you go too big, then it's like we can't do that either. Like you have to set the bar low enough that it's reachable, but like a little bit out of reach, so you hit that little bit of growth. And then so like from the delayed gratification portion with like dopamine
mhm.
hits of like you scroll through whatever and like you like this one or like everything is a dopamine hit. You order DoorDash, you scroll this, you do this. Like there's a you can just you can skip commercials, you can like all the stuff like I don't know if you did this when you were a kid, but like we would watch shows like when the commercials came on like before bed, that would be when we'd have to go brush our teeth or like
Hmm.
fold our laundry or whatever. And
I
now
still do
like
that.
yeah, well I do as
I
well, but
still
I'm
do
saying
that.
like you can now you can just skip like on YouTube, just like skip ad, do
Yeah.
this, do that. Like do you have or have you experienced that within yourself? And then how do you get people to kind of um like take a step into like realizing that like what's happening because it would be so easy just to keep scrolling and like you can get like doom scrolling I think is the term um but everything that's being thrown at us is just dopamine and I feel like we're people are dopamine addicts like I don't know is that I don't know these are just things that like I'm observing and trying to conclude and like you were talking to people about it so
Yeah. Patience, right? People have no patience anymore for anything in a sense. They just want everything when they want it right away. And so like
Amazon
not Ozempic,
yeah
you know what I'm saying? And not to, I'm not saying Ozempic is not something that can be helpful, but I am saying that is something that people have started to use more of in order to see results faster, right? um but not even to get into that conversation. Basically, what you're describing can be sometimes, I hate saying this out loud because everybody thinks they have it and they don't, ADHD, a form of it. And if that's what it is, then you can do things that I use these tasks too. So for one, setting like 20-minute timers on certain tasks and then taking that break in a sense. So yeah, if those commercials are happening, create that as one of those times where you do go and get something else done in a sense. So that is something that I'm almost like you kind of answered it in your question, that I'm reteaching clients nowadays in a sense to be able to utilize that time instead of trying to just fast forward all the time. So that's the biggest thing I would say.
do people
But
just
yeah,
forget? Like when you're talking to people, do they like forget that they can just like, oh, set a timer and like make yourself, or is the problem like that they can't make themselves do stuff? Like there was a quote I heard one time. It was like, um, you're your own worst boss and an even worse employee."
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and forgetting, yeah, somewhat, but at the same time, just like that lack of motivation because, you now do have access to all these things, right? So you don't have to cook a meal when you get home. You don't even have to go pick it up on the way home. You can just DoorDash it to your house in a sense. And what's an extra $5 nowadays, anyways, in DoorDash fees? Probably like 10 at this point. I don't even know. But so, like you said, instant gratification, a lack of patience, but it's also really like generational in a sense, right? So me and you are being able to resonate with each other on how we maybe handle those ads in a commercial in the sense, whereas kids nowadays are not capable. And so maybe if I have children, right, this is something perspective wise that I take into raising my own children, where no, I'm not going to have no iPad kids. Right. I'm not, you're crying at the table and people can solve it with just giving you the phone and letting Miss Rachel play. Well, we're going to cry it out together, right? So, and maybe that's not the best like gentle parenting that people do nowadays, but I'm going to tell you right now, I wasn't gentle parented and I have these other perspectives as well. So there isn't necessarily a right or wrong way to do it, but if you're looking at it again from perspective and this is what you want your kids to look like, then this is how they need to be raised in a sense. So a lot of us grow up and we get tired, and now we're raising the next generation or the people a little bit older than us. And that's why these kids have that like need for instant gratification because they got the phone at dinner. So they would stop crying. They got the iPad in the car. So they would stop fussing, right? So this is where it all stems from. Not to be like a very basic therapist, but childhood, right? It all stems from your childhood in a sense. So yes, forgetting, but at the same time, just not knowing because you weren't raised like that. You weren't
Mm.
raised to say, no, we're going to take that 20-minute car ride and you're going to sit here in silence and you're going to deal with it. And if you react negatively, there will be consequences for it later. Because instead of consequences nowadays, people are just giving that positive, like reinforcement to the behavior in a sense. So that's where I think it all stems from, especially with I have so many kids in my sessions. I have children who are in foster care, and then I have kids who grew up in that like maybe two-parent household. And you can see like a lot of the foster children weirdly have like more consequences and more, like less privileges in a sense. So they have way more patience. I've noticed this the other day, way more patience. They're not allowed to have cell phones. And not every foster kid, but the ones that I've been working with, right? They're not allowed to have certain privileges like going outside and stuff. And these are high schoolers, and they have way more patience than all my other kids who they're handed anything that they want.
Yeah,
So that's
that
where I'm
makes
at.
sense. That makes sense. I think it's also instant gratification for the parents too. It's like, okay, shut up. Here's the thing. I don't actually have to parent you. Um, I noticed that some with like when I'm coaching
Hmm.
the younger kids now, I'm like, I know you're 8, but also like I feel like I paid slightly more attention than that. Or like I was not running around kicking the other kids' balls. Like it's like and then I had one parent tell me this. Like this kid, his sister was like, "Oh, sorry." Like the sister apologized to me for the kid, and the dad is also sitting right there. So I was like, "That's weird." One, but two. So she was like, "Oh, sorry, he doesn't listen." And then the dad basically like told the sister off for like, "Oh, he'll be fine. Girls like troublemakers. You don't have to say that." And I was like, first of all, he's 8. Second of all, what? It's like you're watching. I was like, "What? You're watching the whole practice, like I can't do anything with these like with the other, and it's not like this is a team, right? These are like smaller sessions that I run. It's like 5 kids. It's like one kid disrupts five. It's like that's like I get it if it's a team and like whatever, but so I heard that and I was immediately just like it's
A
like
lot of
how
parents are just too gentle. I hate to say it. I just hate to say it, but like I've had to tell parents that like their kids are my clients, and I've brought their parents to the sessions, and in front of the kids, I've been like, punish this child. Sorry, punish this child. Like you don't
yeah
want to take away their creative outlet because they like art. Take away their damn sketchbook.
yeah
Because right now, what they know, like I've really also been noticing my kids have no remorse. It's scary. So like I
none
had a kid who got in trouble. No, none. I had a kid who got in trouble. She took somebody's phone as like a joke, as a prank in class or whatever. And when the teacher confronted the class and said, "Hey, return the phone. This isn't funny," she didn't do it, and then she like kind of planted it underneath another kid's desk in a sense. And so now that kid who got his phone stolen thinks that the kid with it under the desk is the thief. And they're having words that are not appropriate for school in a sense. And everybody's in trouble. And when I talk to the kid and I say, "Hey, like, do you feel bad?" And she's like, "Well, I feel bad that I got in trouble." Like, but do you feel like you feel any kind of emotion about the kid who got his phone stolen or the other kid who got framed? Like I just I got in trouble, and that's just where my head is at, basically, to paraphrase that whole session, because that's that's where their minds are. Like, what are the consequences? And then 9 times out of 10, the consequences are not that bad, and I'll just do it again. Like she said, she got ISS, right? She was like, it wasn't that bad. We got to play board games in suspension. Like, what are we doing? If I got
board games and
internal suspension,
suspension.
if I got in Eric, if I got internal suspension in school, you would not have seen me for a week. And like, let's
No.
just leave it at that. Not
A-
saying that that's the solution,
And
right?
all, but also internal suspension at school would have been me sitting in the corner staring at the wall for 4 hours or whatever, not playing
And doing like a week's worth of
Monopoly.
work in a day,
Yeah,
right?
that's unbelievable. Like my parents would have been the same. Like I would have gotten in trouble in school and then gotten in more trouble at home.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what it was. Like if I stood up for somebody, then they would be like, "Okay, you did the right thing, but there's still consequences for what you did, and I don't like you're still going to be in trouble with the school, but whatever." So like that's slightly different. But oh, that bugs me. All right, does it I'm going to ask this question off the back of this, not to try and lead you to an answer, but generally speaking, are you concerned about like the future
The
thing?
children of today,
Yes. Yeah.
yes. Yes, 100%. Because they're entitled. They When you lack remorse, it's honestly scary, because it's not saying that this is what it is, but it can be sociopathic, right? They lack empathy in general. So when you lack remorse, which I've had to define what remorse means to a lot of people, and it's like that intense guilt for something that you did, right? Number one, they don't even realize what they're really doing is bad to begin with. And like number two, very selfish. We talked about selfish in the beginning. I tell a lot of my clients who are around our age and up, who don't have this issue, to be in their selfish era, right? Set your boundaries. You go, girl. So like being selfish isn't always bad, but with the kids, Oh my goodness, it's a whole different like level of selfishness. And so the behaviors that I am seeing in the children today are so outrageous because they're allowed. I actually worked in a school for a little bit when I was transitioning between jobs, right? And they're kids that don't even know how to read and they're in fifth grade. Don't even know how to read. And just
How does
like
that even happen? Like, how does that happen?
parents, right? Because if you think about it like this, so like it's funny because my mom speaks Spanish, my dad does not, right? And my dad's Italian, doesn't is not even Latino. So when I was learning Spanish, my dad would take Spanish words and quiz me and make up songs so I would remember, like I still remember to this day, and took the time out of his day to study with me about things he didn't even know about because he wanted to do that with me in order to see me progress in life and to see me do good things and be better. Whereas kids nowadays are coming home, they're watching TikToks, they're looking at people twerking. I had more kids twerking than more kids being able to read in the school that I was working in. And these are third to fifth graders that I worked with. More kids talking about the number one word that I've started to really hate is snitch. Back in my day, we called it tattletaling, right?
Yeah.
And kids nowadays are getting shamed for snitching. And so it's like, I'm Italian, and so yeah, like snitching is not like the thing to do. But at the end of the day, if you're 5 years old and someone pushes you down, like go tell an adult,
Yeah.
like go be a tattletale, right? Because you keep it in, and now they're your ops. Like kids don't really know what these words, like the weight these words actually carry, right? These are real like adult words that are really violent and a part of a whole like street culture, and kids think they're cool. Everything's cool nowadays. So yeah, I have ops. I have no, you have friends that don't like you anymore. Not your ops. So that's another thing too. It's like
A
with
6-year-old
social
calling
media,
somebody an op is crazy.
I'm seeing kids. You know
Oh,
how many kids I've stood in between that they were trying to fight each other because of like talkies or something, like putting their hands on each other. So like when I was in third grade, I had learned what the word anger management meant for my older sister. And there was I'll never forget this. A teacher was yelling at my class and I was like anger management issues. And everybody laughed. And then I got told on. And then I got in trouble at school. And I got home and my mom sent me to my room for a week straight. I read a whole book series in that week. I didn't get to go to my friend's birthday, all the things. Like, but that is what parenting should be, right? When you do something bad, you get a negative consequence. When you do something good, you get that positive reinforcement. Not, I'm not going to pay attention to my kid and you're going to learn whatever you learn on the internet and just misbehave all the time. Anyway, my rant is over, but that's how I feel.
it's interesting because I have a sense of optimism about like generally speaking, but also pessimism for experiencing or seeing similar things to what you're seeing, albeit not the same level that you are. I'm seeing it my own little anecdotal moments and
Mhm.
soccer coaching and whatever, like some of the high schoolers that I talk to, like some of them like get it and some of them just don't get it. And it's very interesting um to see like there's one eh, anyways. Yeah. So it's interesting to see like anecdotally from me, like I'm seeing similar things to what you're seeing. And it's interesting as well because like I don't know where it feels like there's a very small window of parents like age-wise who are that way. And
Mhm.
then because we're not that much younger than them and we're all like
Mhm.
me and you are like, what are you guys doing? And it's a very small window. Um, because then the ones that are slightly older, like once you get up to like 50, you're getting close to like our parents' age. Or for me, like my parents are like in their mid 50s. So
Mhm.
there's a super tiny window. Like it makes me wonder like what happened to those like 10 years of people
I
that
can guess.
go for it.
You want
We
my
can
guess?
let's speculate. Let's have fun. We can go full conspiracy theory mode. We'll speculate for the rest of the time. It'll be loads of fun.
I'm excited. This is my guess. My guess is that, like you were saying before, you bought your house for a box of strawberries, right? Life was a lot easier when gas was 57 cents and when houses were $5.99. And like life was just there was our parents had beepers and not cell phones, right? I won't at least mine did, mine are in their 60s. So our parents they grew up in a completely different time, right? And so now that our generation is getting older and we, maybe some of us had flip phones to start and things like that. We were starting to peek into like different ways of living. Like life's gotten more difficult. Now houses are like depending on where you live, can be $1 million if you live by DC or New York, right? I mean, more than that in those specific areas as well. And so it's more difficult, it's more exhausting, we're more tired. When we're more tired, we don't have the effort to sit there and practice Spanish words with our children. Just get out of my face and go watch TikToks. As long as you're not, murdering anybody or assaulting anybody or breaking anything in this house, like just get out of my face in a sense. Or on the other hand, a lot of parents who are giving those consequences are doing it in a way where they're not teaching the child what the consequences for in a sense, and they're just doing like that instant, you're pissing me off, I'm going to yell at you, I'm going to say some choice words, and you're probably not even going to have respect for me, and therefore you're not going to listen to me to begin with. So I think that those are that generation that's like a little bit older than us, right? Like maybe in their 40s ish now, late 30s to 40s, that have been raising this generation that I've been seeing is stuck in like what I just described. And now me and you are seeing how kids are being raised, and we're going to try to fix it in a sense, right? So it's just going to be like that, those constant different gaps of like times changing, but also being able to like observe what's around us and say, I'm not going to let my kid do this, that, or the third. So that would be my observation. Maybe you disagree or agree. I don't know. It's just a perspective, but that's what I've started to notice around parents in
Yeah.
general,
I
typically.
think I think generally I agree with that. And the part
Hmm.
that like is a little bit hopeful is like it's a very small window, right? Like if you think of like yeah, like those 10 years of whatever 10 years for as a ballpark estimate, whatever.
Hmm.
Um might have a lot more like not great people growing up in the world or whatever, or like poorly raised or however you want to say it. But if you look at who's running like companies and different things and who will be in positions of leadership and whatever, like that 10 years, like, yeah, it'll be a lot of people, but at the same time, like those people will quickly get pushed out by like the ones coming afterwards. And then the ones who are still older than them. So like, because those people will enter the workforce and people like me and you will still be in it. So like, yeah, it's like, it feels like a blip, an annoying blip, maybe. And if we can get ourselves as a society back on track, I think it's not. I don't know. I would say I'm generally optimistic. I think there's been a big turnaround on a lot of things. Like like for example, um, if you had if you had told me 5 years ago that I don't know some of the like DEI things, for example, like we need diversity in places, but like the way it was being run wasn't the best. And so now you've got companies that are closing down their like DEI, like Boeing closed, like Boeing had three planes crash, and they're like, okay, we're not doing DEI anymore. And that might have not even been the reason. But it feels like a very like a 10-year kind of just it's like alternate timeline, honestly. And it feels like we're going, I don't even know. So I guess generally I'm optimistic, but at the same time, it's gonna like require a lot of work, a lot of
Yeah.
self-reflection, a lot of like people that like even these conversations that we can just throw out on the internet and people can hopefully get something out of it. Like you've given some super good tips to people. I think this is a super positive development that people like you have a level of expertise in things, I have a level of expertise in things, and we can now share these and yeah, there might be some nutcases that are also doing this, but then like you can filter them out and I don't know, I don't know.
But
Your
you know what
thought?
else I've noticed too?
Sure.
Like between the ages, oh, I hope people who are my friends, if they see this, that are these ages don't get offended, but between ages of like 35 and maybe like almost like 50, but I'll say 35 to 50. Um, they almost in a weird way, their work ethic is also kind of now matching my like 20-year-olds and younger in a sense. I've noticed that as well. I've noticed people like our age, like maybe 25 to like that 35 mark is matching our parents a little bit more, which I find interesting as well. And so I have a lot of people that I know that are in that 35 to 50 range that are making close to no money and don't maybe have higher education, which not necessarily you need in order to be successful, but have felt like living paycheck to paycheck is stable enough in a sense and has been like more so just okay as long as they have those dopamine hits throughout their day, right? So as long as they can get like those nacho fries from Taco Bell or as long as they can like meet somebody romantic that they can like hook up with and things like that. Like I have a lot of 20-year-old clients who are don't know what they want to do with their life and it doesn't concern them and they don't want to go to college and they'll stay at home all day and they've heard about SSDI and can you write me a letter for my depression so that I can get disability? And I'm content with it if it's only $1,000 a month. And you know what I'm saying? And I'm content with this, that, and the third. And so contentment is like the word I want to really use here. I think these age groups are more so content, whereas like me and you are more hungry and our parents were more hungry to achieve like a certain level of greatness in a sense. And so when you think about also who's raising who, right? That also plays a role too. And I think maybe people might not necessarily either agree or see what I'm seeing, but I see it every day because this is what I do for a living, right? I will know the first thing I know about you is your demographics. So your age, your gender, your whatever the case may be, what you do for a living, what your salary is. And then I start to learn who you are and what your thought processes are. And so that's why I think I've noticed this a little bit more than maybe somebody who isn't in my field. And so this is just what I've basically seen throughout time in a sense. And I find that interesting as well because every time somebody, I have someone who's like 35 who's comfortable making like 40,000, $50,000 a year. And that like to me, is not where I would want to be at that age in a sense. So, but it's all just what you want in life, right? If you're comfortable with that, cool. But for me, and maybe for you too, Eric, like I don't think me and you would be comfortable sitting at a 40, $50,000 salary in a
No,
sense.
to me that would be basically unacceptable. Like from the standpoint of like I would be so disappointed in myself that one like I didn't like I didn't act on a like want to do something more than that. And it's not even just about like whatever the salary number is, it's just like a level of freedom that I want to um obtain for myself and my family. It's like a level of like there's a level of not comfortability, but like
Well, that's part of it, right?
but like you don't want your kid like the kids to be too comfortable, right? Because then they turn into iPad kids. Like so, like there's like a separation there, but it's a level of like freedom that you're not beholden to any one place, or like I'm not going to be beholden to a landlord that's going to come boot me out because they can raise the rents on me. Like I'm not going to put myself in a
Yes.
situation that my life can be
Altered significantly.
altered significantly by something that
Hmm.
is out of my control. And of course, like there's exceptions to that and whatever else. But like even if I was to get fired or whatever, like there's things that I have set up that wouldn't I would that would not I would not allow that to occur. Um,
And
does
when I
it?
was starting private practice, you don't just jump into 50 clients right away, right?
Hmm.
You build up. And so I don't get paid if I don't see a client. I'm not
Yeah.
salaried like that. I get paid from insurance or private pay. And so, the first couple of paychecks, if you're seeing a couple clients a week, literally, they could be like a couple $100s. And so to go off what you're saying, you know, I'm at a point where in my life, based off my past career choices and education, I was able to slowly gain clientele and deal with those small paychecks because I had that not comfortability, but I had, a backup plan in a sense, right? Like people don't even have savings accounts nowadays. People are living, like I'm saying, when I say paycheck to paycheck, I mean paycheck to paycheck to whereas if I've ever told somebody, oh yeah, like, which I don't really think I've lived paycheck to paycheck, but I've had a savings account, I just ignored it in a sense. So
Hmm.
even if I was in that mentality of, oh yeah, well, maybe I can't do this because my funds are this, that, and the third, I technically always had the funds. I
Yeah.
just ignored it. And people, like I said, people are using, I mean, I'm guilty too, but FanDuel, right? Like sports gambling, like how can I make $1,000 quicker than actually working, X amount of hours a week in a sense.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect of it too.
I do also want to mention like to say like that it is very achievable if you right, you have to start with little things like the example that people always use is I'm not buying Starbucks. Um, and I think that's just like the example that the finance people use. But you have to start somewhere, but it's also very achievable, right? Like if you put something into like a mutual fund or something like that, you save up some money, put it into a mutual fund, and you just let it sit there, and like it will grow for you.
Hmm.
Like all these things are achievable. Like this is not some kind of like pipe dream. Like the tools are there. You just have to like know where to look. And I think that can be a piece too. Does it frustrate? So for me, listening to you, I would feel frustrated. Like you don't want anything more from life than whatever the situation is. And that, who am I to say that, right? So like how do you deal with that from the standpoint of like your own personal like letting your own personal thoughts about something get involved in like how you speak to it like a client and not letting a certain level of frustration show or a level of like what do you mean you can't just like to use the get out of bed to go to the gym example, what do you mean you can't just get out of bed? Like for you that might not be a problem, but you're talking to somebody who
Yeah.
that is a big problem. And for me, like I would consider myself generally a patient person, but there's also some days where I'm like I'm not dealing with whatever it is, right? So like
Hmm.
how do you handle that for your own like in your own practice and
Mental
life?
stability.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, my job is really to meet clients where they're at, right? And so, one, after doing this for so many years now, I am also used to this a little bit more. So it's easier for me nowadays versus like when I first started, in a sense. And there's things like we call them countertransference to where like you resonate to a point where that person could remind you of somebody in your own personal life, in a sense. And so, like, you could get a little bit more attached in that aspect. But the main focus is to realize like my job is a job just like anybody else's. I'm there to do something and then I leave. Right. And so if that doing something is and I'm meeting a client where they're at, that combination is looking at somebody who has a hard time getting out of bed in the morning versus somebody like me and you who just maybe wants to like skip the gym one day of the week, in a sense, something like that, right? And seeing the differences is now adapting like what I know to help that client, in a sense. So okay, what I've done a lot of the times is I've told clients that we don't look at certain things as being an achievement, right? So, like, if you do deal with like a major depressive disorder, severe, right? Getting out of bed can be an achievement for you. And so, what can we achieve today, in a sense, right? Brushing your teeth can be an achievement. And yeah, of course, for me, I can sit here and I can say, what do you mean you don't brush your teeth? What do you mean you don't get out of bed? Because I'm at a different place in my life right now. But that's part of what I do is looking at that and realizing not everybody has the same mental capacity. I used this example the other day. Um, I constantly have clients like in dating who, why can't they just give me what I give them, in a sense? And I say, okay, so like let's say your emotional capacity is like this, right? And even when you're maybe at a low, you're right here. Well, so and so's emotional capacity is right here. And when they're at their high, they're right here. So your low is still higher than their high. And when you're at your best day and they're at their worst, you're going to really feel a difference. But
Mm,
regardless, they are never going to be able to reach that capacity of you, right? So I can sit here and I can say, yeah, it's really easy to do all these things. But for some people who really just like their brain doesn't function that way, and this has helped me with dating too, because you're trying to almost get somebody to reach your level but there is going to be somebody that's at your level and you can just go find them instead, in a sense, versus trying to force somebody to grow and achieve what you can achieve emotionally. And does that make sense
yeah, yeah,
how I
100%.
word it? So that's been helpful. In general, right? I also am a really big fan of surrounding yourself around people that you want to like see yourself at the same level as, in a sense, right? So if I have friends that I always talk about it like a house. Not everyone's going to probably be invited to your bedroom. It's the most private part of your house typically. So then I'll say, who are your bedroom friends, right? And people will say like my sisters, my best friend, my boyfriend, so and so and so and so. Okay, the friends that you go out with and maybe drink with on a Friday night, are they in your bedroom? No. Okay, we'll keep them in the kitchen, right? And so that's another kind of like analogy to be able to visualize that not everybody is going to be at your level, but then you need to also understand that you are kind of impacted by the people you keep in your bedroom, the closest circle of people. So assuring that, I mean, I've had friends that I've cut off because they haven't necessarily done me like dirty, in a sense, but I just didn't feel like they helped me grow either, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, just having the understanding that everybody's different and you can't force somebody to be on the same page as you all the time when I mean there's an array of reasons why. Number one is the way we're raised, right? So I mean, I told my foster kids the other day, like you have different things that are impacting you that maybe someone from a two-parent healthy household with a good money, you know, has that's helped them in life, and you're starting somewhere else in a sense. So that doesn't mean you can't achieve the same amount of greatness, but you're starting from different places, right? They're starting at this part of the race and you're starting back here. You're both trying to get here in a
Mm,
sense.
yeah,
So yeah,
that makes sense. All
that keeps
right.
me grounded.
Enough enough depressing things. Let's talk about
Sorry.
The NBA. Although
Let's do it.
I have no idea how the Knicks are doing, so that might also be depressing. But from what I remember,
Just hurt my heart a little. Go ahead.
I don't know. Is it depressing? I'm
No, we're
looking
doing
up the
great.
standings. Okay, good. So, so for me, I have not paid that much attention to the NBA. I did just play pickup basketball today for like the first time in
Nice.
forever. Like I'm doing it like once every 2 months because I've been so busy, and then it feels
Mhm.
weird. Some days jumpers on, some days not at all.
Yep. Welcome to 30s. We're
Yeah,
almost there.
today was not one of those days. Oh, Miami is not doing so bad. We're 10-10. I know we blew out the Lakers. Okay, actually, let's talk about this. Did you ever watch JJ Redick's podcast at all?
Which podcast?
JJ Redick before he was coaching, the one with LeBron.
Um, I feel like I might have seen snippets of it, but I don't think I've actually watched a full episode. No.
Okay, but you know who he is, right? So
Hmm.
like, what is your take on him getting that coaching job and then what they've been doing this season? Because like they've not been doing so hot, and then like the Heat game just looked absolutely abysmal. Like they it looked like the All-Star game for level of defense from them, like effort wise.
Yeah.
So, but also they're 12 and 11. So, like NBA Twitter blew them up for that game. But I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that whole situation, like with Bronny and JJ Redick being first time head coach and like all these things?
Yeah, I do. I have so many thoughts. Where do I want to start? I just don't. It's just such a bad thing to say because RIP Kobe, but I think the Lakers organization since Kobe honestly like had that highest scoring game since then, the Lakers organization has been kind of trash to me,
Hmm.
um, as a whole. So I think that it's almost just turned into, how do I want to say this the best word, the best way possible? Like it's all politics with the Lakers. Let's start with the Bronze, right? For the first thing, let me just get this out here because if someone wants to stop watching this right now, they might as well because I don't like LeBron James. Let me just throw that out there now. Okay. I think if we're talking about GOAT conversation, Michael Jordan's the GOAT. So stop watching if you love LeBron James because I don't. I
No,
don't think
don't
he should
stop
have
watching.
gotten.
I need the retention numbers. Anyways, keep going.
Sorry, just kidding. Or watch and then yell at me in the comments. That's fine. I think that Brownie wasn't ready. I think that he should have stayed in college. I think that he's trying to, that pipeline dream like LeBron wants. It's LeBron James Jr., right? So he just wants him to be just as great. But in reality, like you look at like Kyan Anthony, right? Who is now going to Syracuse for basketball, who may never be Carmelo Anthony, but is significantly better, in my opinion, than Bronny James. And so he's doing his own journey in a sense, not to like deviate too much from the question. But I just think that the Lakers in general, even with JJ Redick as the coach, is just turning into more of like a show versus like the actual game, right? So Anthony Davis is a great, great player. I would actually rather see him somewhere else so that he could actually win a little bit more in a sense. I don't see the Lakers ever being a serious contender on the West Side, especially not at this rate in general. I'm a big fan of the way like Coach Tibbs coaches. I think honestly that's probably because that's how my dad coaches and that's how I've been coached, where you're more like hands-on, gritty, like you're gonna play until you bleed type of vibe.
Yeah.
Where I think the Lakers are cradled in a sense and are more so just for like, oh, we're gonna get pictures of like LeBron and Bronny next to each other, and that's gonna be like the next T-shirt that everybody wears. And so I'm sure there's Laker fans out there that are really upset with what I'm saying right now, and I'm not really that sorry about it. But at the end of the day, like I just don't like. I don't even know why we're talking about I just don't see them as being a contender. To be really honest with you,
Yeah.
I
No,
don't.
I don't disagree with anything that you said. I will say Bronny was interviewed, I think, before the draft or whatever, and they asked him for his what his NBA like comparison would be at like the top level, and he said like if he maximized his career, he could be like Avery Bradley. And I thought like That's very much a mature answer of him to like understand kind of like I don't think he is thinking that he's gonna be his dad. Um, which I find super interesting, right? Because there's guys that there's a gazillion guy. I had this conversation with somebody the other day. It's like there's a gazillion guys that will rotate through like the last three roster slots of NBA teams who are like kind of at that level, who are good enough to like make a roster, but like not good enough to start, and they'll just rotate through whatever. And I think he could end up being good enough to be one of those, or maybe a little bit more. But he's getting the opportunity, of course, because of who his dad is. And so like it's a weird one because IQ wise, I think he's good enough to do it. Size wise, he's like I mean he's small, but it's not like he's 5'10". Um and so like you end up with him in this weird spot where it's like I don't know, I feel a bit bad for him to be honest. It's like just let him play. Let him play in the G League and let him do what he wants, like or not what he wants, but like let him play in the G League and if he's good enough to make it, he'll be good enough to make it. And because at this point, right, like the coaches are paid to win, so like they're not going to play him if he's not playing well at that play. Like Braun can only do so much to like make him
But
be
this
on
is
the
going to be
court.
Braun's last year for
I
sure.
know. So like they had the
Because
moment of
he's
them
not.
going on the court together, and like
Hmm.
I think that's probably it from the standpoint of like we need to win. He's not good enough right now,
Hmm.
so I think that's it. The other thing that
And that was cool to witness. I will say that, by the
it
way. That
was,
is
it
cool.
was,
I'm not that much of a hater. That was really
yeah,
exciting to see.
yeah. The other thing with Reddick is like him and Braun clearly have a level of like IQ and like about how to play basketball. Like they know what to do. But then that doesn't translate necessarily into like coaching because you have to get people to put
Yep.
in effort and you have to get people to put in all these other things. And that's the part to me that feels strange. It's like there's something missing. Like I don't know if they don't respect him or like they don't whatever or like there's too much of like
Well, you have
Braun
to make people respect
shadow.
you.
Yeah, but like you would
LeBron's running
think
that team.
well yeah, that's the thing that's weird to me is because I don't think that Reddick would have that problem somewhere else. Like
I
I
don't disagree with you.
I
But
think he's
go ahead.
earned enough respect from like he's been on camera enough, and I think he's earned enough respect like from the guys that he talks to on the podcast and whatever. Like because his whole thing before he was coaching, he was interviewing like all these guys, and I think they all respect him enough as like a basketball person, whether it's player, mind, whatever you want to say. Like I don't think he would have that problem somewhere else.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you, but I will say, like, one of the first things you said that I would like to touch on is that just because you play doesn't mean you can coach. Just because you know basketball doesn't mean you can coach. I mean, this is a silly example, but do you remember intramurals with basketball in college? And I refed, and I was asked to ref the men's championship game, but that's because I was a good ref. I didn't know I was going to be a good ref. Yes, I play. Yes, I know, but that you also have to call things fairly in this. So now translating that to coaching, coaching is more than just running plays and making plays in general. Like you're also like severely impacting the lives of these people, like personally as well. Like
Hmm.
coaching as a whole, I have a whole perspective on coaching, probably because of my dad. But I don't
Share.
disagree. I truly think that you can like make or break a kid's, how do I want to say it? And I say kid, but I'm talking, I mean, coaching in general. Like when I think back of my own coaches in a sense, like there were people that could have coached me to be great. And there were people that coached me and their style almost like discouraged me to not be as good as I could have been, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And coaching is also understanding people's personal lives and then like kind of in putting that into perspective with the actual game as well. And if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, like so like when I use Tibbs as an example, right? Like I like his style more because he's making people in a sense or the Knicks work to be the best team that they can be. Rex Ryan, not to jump to football for a second, but I don't know if you heard the most recent interview with Rex Ryan.
Mm-mm.
Like obviously the Jets fired Coach Sala and now the new coach is it was the other coordinator. It's a whole thing, but the Jets have so much potential. Like this was our Super Bowl year. We put so much money into Aaron Rodgers. We have Sauce Gardner and Bryce Hall, and all these things. And instead, we're just messing up because, much like LeBron James, Aaron Rodgers is kind of running the team because we don't have a coach that is sitting there and saying, wait a second now, I know you're Aaron Rodgers, I know you're LeBron James, but this is not your show. Like, to play it is, but let me organize how you're playing in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Let me, maybe you prefer a 2-3 zone, but we're gonna run man in a sense. And that's just like a really simple example of what it could be. But at the end of the day, like, it is the coach's job to make sure that each player, like the team chemistry has to be there. You talk about the Villanova Knicks, right? I was really, really upset when they traded Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle, because now we got Mikal Bridges. We didn't even get to see the full Nova Knicks play. So in my head, I was talking smack like, that was team chemistry. That was brotherhood right there. But Karl Anthony Towns is having the best offensive year of his entire career in a
Hmm.
sense. So there's also things that they see that we don't see, right? And that's why I don't coach the Knicks, right? That's
Yeah.
why I'm not Leon. So you also have to keep that into perspective as well. Like, we can sit here and we can say what we know, but at the end of the day, like, they know certain things way more than other people do, and that's what makes them better coaches in general.
Yeah.
If that,
No, it makes total sense.
yeah.
I think for soccer, the other thing that I love that makes it so much more complicated is for soccer is like the cultural aspect. If you're an English team and you bring in a coach from Spain, it's like is there a language barrier, a cultural barrier, like all these other things that are accounted for. Like, is the coach going to bring Spanish players with him? And then like there's so many things that go into coaching, especially at the top levels. That it's like coaching at the youth levels is can you teach them how to like dribble basketball or shoot a basketball or whatever, and then like it's such a different job description of like managing these huge personalities and these different people and like how do you sort through that? It's like when like
And find
the
their strengths,
yes, yeah,
right?
yeah, 100%.
And use their
Because
strengths.
it's so much more tactical than it is
Hmm.
technical at the higher level and almost like mental as well. Like Coach Spo, that's why when Coach Spo, he's like first year head coach, and then all of a sudden LeBron shows up, and it's like, is this gonna work? But somehow it did, and now Coach Spo is regarded as one of the best coaches in the NBA.
Hmm.
And so that was an interesting thing to me because there was something about the personalities that just worked with that group. Um, And now, yeah, I was gonna ask you about that trade because I think there some clip that Dante DiVincenzo was like actually not that upset that he was traded, or maybe I'm misremembering.
So here's mine, because we love conspiracy theories. Here's my theory about the big ragu. Okay.
Okay.
I think that he, so let's start with last season. The Knicks were really hurt last season. We went to the playoffs, and we had most of our stars. I mean, even Jalen Brunson had to get surgery on his hand at the last game of the season. Josh Hart tore something in his abdomen. Mitchell Robinson was out. I mean, I could go in the whole team. We were using Alec Burks really to play. Like, we did very well during the playoffs, but our entire team was hurt. So Dante took on a much bigger role, right? And Dante really started to shine. He had the best offensive year of his career as a Knick too.
Yeah, yeah.
And people, he started to really, you could tell the way he would talk to people. He was like really about New York culture. I mean, even in interviews, he said, "Look at this. This is what we do it for," right? So you could tell he loved being a Knick. However, I don't think he was going to love his new role. I think that once Mikal Bridges was traded over, Dante was not going to see as much playing time. So when you look at the first game that the Timberwolves had with the Knicks, you see Dante yelling like, towards Tibbs and Brunson's dad, Rick Brunson. You see him saying like, that's what happens when they let you run the show. He starts yelling that, and you
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
I mean, obviously there's a lot more that they have that we all don't see, so that can mean a lot of different things in a sense. But we can all take a big guess that he feels like now at the Timberwolves, like he can start, he can play, he can do so much better. But he's been sucking at the Timberwolves season. I don't know if you've watched any of their games.
No,
He's
let me
he
look.
his P look up his PPG this season.
Okay, I'm
Let
looking.
me hear what
Keep
his
going.
stats are. And I people think right now that he's like trying to suck on purpose so that the Knicks can get him back for like little to no cost. But right now the Timberwolves are looking for somebody else to replace his role, even. And so this was a hard trade for me. And honestly and truly, like, the first game was hard for me to watch. I talked to my dad about it. And my dad, Italian. And so he's always gonna have Dante DiVincenzo's back. He's like, yeah, well, they should have played him more and this, that, and a third. And other people that I know that I'm friends with from New York also like understand Dante's pain. But to me, like, maybe this is just my perspective, like, no matter what happens, like whether you're traded or whatever the case may be, like, you should always carry yourself a certain way. And
Yeah,
so And that's coming from me. And I'm a New Yorker, right? And I talk a little bit of smack too. But you were once a Knick. You loved being a Knick, and now you're acting like you don't mind the trade. I think he hates Minnesota. What the hell is even in Minnesota? So I think he wants to be a Knick again. I think he wanted to be with the Villanova boys. I think he's seeing how good the Knicks are doing, and he wants. I'm going to say something that's going to be very extreme, but I think the Knicks are going to be much closer to getting, a finals championship versus the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
And Anthony Edwards is handled this trade like beautifully, but they should have also looked at trading Rudy Gobert before they traded Karl Anthony Towns. That's just my personal opinion. But we won that trade. And I never wanted to admit that. And I was not happy about Karl Anthony Towns joining our team. But now seeing like his contributions, we made the right decision.
Yeah.
But I love Julius Randle. Like this was still hard. Like even when they traded RJ Barrett and quickly, I had a
Yeah,
hard time
yeah.
with that because I was there when RJ Barrett got drafted. The year with Ja
Yeah.
and Zion and everything. So we won the trade, but it's just being like such a like a Knicks fan. It's really hard to see people that you start to like get jerseys of or like admire. Like Julius Randle was with us when nobody wanted us. Look at the
Mm.
team that we have with Julius Randle started. Like the only person left from this team is Mitchell Robinson, and he's hurt. He's coming back soon, but like Julius Randle picked us up when we were so down in a sense and stuck with us when we were bad. And I just feel like after that shoulder surgery, like he should have had that one more year to be able to prove like we're going to get the Knicks a championship. And so people say, oh, he held back art.
Lost you. Bueller.
On a roll.
Okay, we're back. Technical difficulties. She's back. Yeah, okay, so he's averaging DiVincenzo's 8.5 points a game.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, so not great. And then on the other side, Mikal Bridges is 16.5. So
And he's not even having that good of a season yet, really and truly.
no, he's not. And Towns
Like
is
Mikael
20.
Bridges, like if you're on, I'm on Nick's Twitter.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
Towns is
we took a dump on him
25.
on Nick's Twitter.
Dude,
Yeah,
Towns is 25 and 13, which is like can't really ask for much more than that, to be honest. So,
right.
um, what was the other thing I was gonna say? I don't even remember. Cleveland has been having a very good year, which I don't, was that a surprise to people that they're this good?
Yes. Yeah, but I will say this because they were like 13-0 before they lost, I think. I can't remember the
Yeah.
actual like first loss they had. But I mean, they don't look like a bad team, but I just still don't think that they're like they'll be in the playoffs, but I don't think they'll be at the finals.
Yeah, like
Um,
20 and 3 good is like crazy.
yeah. But I will say this, like, um, you also have to remember like it's the beginning of the season, right? And so especially for the Knicks, like we just got a whole new team. Like trades were just finalized and stuff. So everybody's learning to play with everybody right now in a sense, which is why if you actually look at who we lost to, like teams like the Rockets, um, they weren't Rockets are average. I mean,
They're second in
Dylan
the
Brooks.
West right now.
I don't know. I just don't see the Rockets as being a good contender either. Maybe I'm just a hater.
I don't
I
know.
feel like I
The
am.
standings look like the standings look weird. Like the Rockets are second in the West, and then well, there are three teams tied for second is Houston, Dallas, and Memphis. And then Golden State, then the Clippers, then Phoenix, then Denver. Like the West feels strange, like and then so
And everybody always
The
says the
Thunder's in
West is
first.
better.
Yeah, and then the East, like Cleveland is 20 and 3, and then Boston, who you kind of expect to be up there, and then Orlando, and then you guys, then Atlanta, Milwaukee, then Miami. And then there's a bunch of teams with losing records after that. And then of
Like
course
the
there's
Pistons,
yeah, and then of course there's
the
Washington that's
Wizards.
2 and 18. So,
Yeah, the Wizards are so bad.
yeah. Well, Kuzma and Jordan Poole going at it. Jesus Christ. They're so
It's
bad.
bad. It's bad.
Well, maybe I'll go to a game then because tickets will be super cheap. But
I'm going to the next game in December. There's one at the Capital One Arena.
well,
So
we should hang out and then actually hang out. Wink, wink, in case that other person is watching. Uh, Jeez. All right. Well, I feel like. Do you have any last nickels before we get you out of here?
Go Knicks. Knicks all day till I die, basically. And this is going to be our year. And anybody who thinks it's not our year, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I have no problem having that conversation. So shout out to the Heat. They're, Dookie Puffs right now, but no disrespect, but
All right. Tyler Hero's balling, so it's fine.
but yeah, no, that's pretty much it, I would say. My life is really just mental health and slash work and the Knicks.
Are you like allowed to advertise? Like if people want to like go check out what you're doing, is there a place for them to go do that?
Yes, so I have a wait list right now. I'm currently not taking clients because I am so packed. But you can find me on Psychology Today, just as my full government name, Lisa Muller. And then I work for two different private practices, which I can give you the links if you want to include them in the video.
Yep.
And then lastly, what I will say is I've recently decided to start a separate social media for therapy to give a little bit of like life hacks throughout days, and maybe make some like somewhat funny but really relatable reels and stuff. And so I will be launching that soon. And
Oh,
yeah,
I
just
didn't
stay
even know
tuned for
we
that.
didn't even talk about that at all. Do you want to talk about that more, or is it just stay tuned for that?
We can, I mean, there's not too much to talk about just yet. Basically, what I want to do is I'm very much like I like to be organized, so I want to make more content before I start it, and then be like, oh, I still have to make this video to put, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
But long story short, I had a friend who sent me a video that was like, and I see them on Instagram sometimes, like reels that relate to me, and it was a funny thing about being a therapist, and I was like, I wish I had more of this. Like, I wish I could see more videos of this. And then there's a couple shows I've been watching. If you haven't heard of Shrinking on Apple TV,
Mm-mm.
it's like basically about a therapist whose style is more similar to mine, but he lacks boundaries completely. I have boundaries. So, but he's more real. He's more like in your face. He's more confrontational. He'll look at his client and be like, "You've been talking about the same thing for 5 weeks. Like, are we going to actually make a change or what?" And there has been times that I've like passionately been like, "What are we doing? We're gonna keep letting so and so do this to you." You know what I'm saying? So it's relatable, and I want to kind of almost share a little bit of what I feel like. This just sounds so narcissistic, but a little bit of what it like is a gift in my opinion. I think I'm really good at helping other people, and I just want to expand that. So yeah, when I launch, I'll let you know, and maybe you can do like a little shout out thing for it.
Yeah, we'll do
And
that. We'll put the whenever like you get the link out, I'll just add it to the description whenever that's out. So,
okay,
if the link is not there, it's because it hasn't been launched yet, for people listening. But if it is there, go check it out. And yeah, that sounds great. Well, thanks for your time. Always enjoy the conversation, and
always.
go check the links out in the description. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.